In the middle of the night in Los Angeles, Louis breaks into a train yard parking lot and begins cutting a section of chain-link fence. Suddenly, he saw a light approaching and quickly hid his tools before being discovered by a guard. The guard demands to see identification, and Louis approaches, pretending to cooperate, before attacking the guard, knocking him out, and stealing his watch. Afterward, Louis goes to a junkyard and sells the section of fence to the manager. After a lengthy negotiation over the price, Louis asks if the manager is hiring. He uses corporate jargon to sell himself, but the manager immediately rejects him. Undeterred, Louis offers to take an unpaid internship to gain experience. However, the manager refuses, saying he would never hire a thief, implying he knows where Louis got the fence. Later, as Louis is driving, he sees a few police cars pass by and stops to see what's happening. It turns out there's been an accident and now a car is on fire with someone trapped inside. At that moment, Joe and his crew arrive to film everything. Louis observes closely, intrigued by what's happening. After they finish filming, Louis asks Joe about his job, and Joe explains that he's a stringer, a freelance journalist who goes to crime or accident scenes to capture footage, then sells the videos to the highest bidding TV stations. All a stringer needs is a camera and a police scanner. Finding the job fascinating, Louis asks if Joe is hiring, but Joe replies that he is not. The next day, Louis watches the accident coverage on TV and becomes even more determined to join the industry. He goes to the beach and waits for a man to let his guard down before stealing his bicycle, which he then pawns. The shop owner refuses to negotiate the price no matter how much Louis insists. Finally, Louis asks for store credit and exchanges it for a camcorder and a police scanner. That night, he uses the scanner to start listening to reports in the area but realizes he doesn't understand the codes and needs to quickly figure out the route to get to the scenes. Louis arrives at the scene of a simple arrest for the first time, but the police immediately chase him away. Next, he tries to capture footage of a woman being stopped by the police for drunk driving, but once again, the officers chase him off. Finally, Louis arrives at the scene of a bloody car robbery and gets close to the victim to film some truly disturbing footage. This angers a police officer, who immediately tells Louis to leave. Another stringer curses Louis for ruining the chance to film further. Louis ignores his anger and follows him to a phone booth to eavesdrop on the conversation and learn how to negotiate with TV stations, as well as the prices to ask for. Later, Louis goes to Channel 6 and presents the footage to news director Nina. She is immediately impressed with how close Louis got to the scenes. She calls Frank, the producer, to come see, but he panics and says they can't air such graphic footage during the morning show. Nina says she will add a warning and reminds him that she is the one who makes the decisions. In the end, she agrees to buy the footage. Louis tries to negotiate the price but ultimately doesn't get the amount he was hoping for. However, Nina tells Louis that he has great potential and just needs a better camera because the quality of his footage is currently insufficient. She says she's willing to buy more of his footage in the future. Louis asks her about what works for viewership ratings. Nina explains that their audience is interested in horrific accidents and violent crimes in wealthy areas, mostly predominantly white neighborhoods. The next morning, Louis sees his video on TV and feels like he's accomplished something. He uploads the news clip to his computer and searches for a list of online police codes to memorize their meanings. Later, Louis meets with a young man named Rick for an interview. Once again, Louis uses a lot of business jargon to ask questions and gets Rick to talk about himself. However, Louis ultimately decides to hire Rick because he has a phone, knows the area well, and can use GPS. Louis reveals that this is an unpaid internship, which causes Rick to protest since he needs at least a small amount of money due to his near-homeless situation. After a lengthy discussion, Louis agrees to pay Rick $30 per night. In the evening, Louis and Rick sit in the car, listening to the police scanner in search of an interesting event. Louis takes this opportunity to teach Rick the police codes. After hours with nothing happening, they finally hear about a fire and rush to the scene. Rick's task is to find the fattest rat on the GPS and direct Louis, but Louis drives recklessly and yells at Rick because he is so eager to get to the scene first. Rick, stressed out, directs them wrongly, and when they arrive at the correct location, it's too late because the paramedics have already taken the victim away. After Joe mocks Louis for being late, Louis gets angry with Rick and demands that he improve his communication skills. Rick asks Louis not to rush, and the next time they have a good lead, Louis doesn't yell at Rick, and they finally arrive on time. However, the police have already cordoned off the house that was robbed, and there's nothing interesting to film. Louis refuses to give up and waits until the police let their guard down, then sneaks into the house. He finds bullet holes in the kitchen and rearranges the photos on the refrigerator around the bullet holes to create a more dramatic scene. Before leaving, he steals some junk mail to get the names of the victims. Shortly after, Louis brings the video to Nina, and she absolutely loves it. Frank is alarmed because it's clear Louis broke into the house and took the victims' names from their private mail, but Nina decides to use the video anyway. From then on, Louis and Rick become very successful at finding good stories and filming them to sell to Nina. Rick figures out the best routes for Louis to get to the scenes quickly, while Louis records every gruesome detail without any shame, always avoiding the police. Louis frequently watches TV to see his work on screen and downloads all the clips to his computer, creating a collection. One night, they arrive at the scene of a car accident before the police. Louis tries to interview one of the drivers, but he curses at Louis for trying to talk to the 911 operator. Louis checks the damaged cars and discovers the other driver is dead in a dark area. He starts dragging the body in front of the headlights to get a better shot and films as much as he can until the police arrive and chase him away. Joe sees Louis passing by and realizes he's lost this one. Later, when Louis brings the video to Nina, she notices he has blood on his sleeve, but Louis ignores it and invites her to dinner. Initially, Nina refuses, saying she doesn't want to jeopardize their professional relationship. However, Louis implies that he will stop providing Nina with good footage if she refuses his invitation, leaving her with no choice but to agree. The next day, Joe meets Louis and explains that he will expand his team with more operational vans, and wants Louis to join. Louis refuses, and when Joe insists, Louis threatens him with violence. Joe angrily walks away, cursing Louis's name. By Saturday, Louis has dinner with Nina at a restaurant and admits that he wants her to be his girlfriend. Once again, Nina refuses, saying it's just professional courtesy. Louis immediately starts quoting a lot of data from his research, pointing out that her station has the lowest viewer ratings and that it's his videos that have brought in thousands of new viewers. He knows Nina's contract is about to expire, and if she wants it renewed and to keep her job, she'll have to accept his offer. Reluctantly, Nina has no choice but to agree to meet Louis over the weekend so they can be together, in exchange for him selling her videos exclusively. A while later, Rick makes another mistake with directions, and Louis fails to make it to the biggest event of the night. Joe and his team get all the footage first, and Joe mocks Louis for it. Finally, at the end of the night, Louis brings Nina videos of petty crimes, and Nina is furious that the rival channel will get the big story, instead of her channel. Her boss will be furious, and she feels like she's sold herself to Louis without getting anything in return. The next morning, Louis watches Joe's footage on the rival channel and gets so angry that he smashes the bathroom mirror. Seeking revenge, he decides to sneak into Joe's house and sabotage his van. That night, Louis and Rick arrive just in time to film a car accident. It turns out to be Joe's van, and he's badly injured in the crash, so he's being rushed to the hospital. Rick thinks it's wrong to film a colleague, and he says that Joe is also one of their own, but Louis doesn't care. He continues moving closer to record everything. Joe glares at Louis with a look of fury as he chokes on his own blood. A few nights later, Louis and Rick quickly arrive at a large mansion that has been broken into, just before the police arrive. Louis sneaks inside and sees the criminals running away. He hides in the bushes to film their faces and the license plate of their van. Then, Louis goes inside the house and records all the blood on the floor, following the trail to find the bodies of the victims, one by one. Louis even filmed an empty cradle. He found the final body. It was the man. Louis continued filming him before fleeing with Rick, just before the police arrived. They stop a few blocks away so Louis can quickly edit the footage of the criminal and the surviving victim. A while later, Louis brings the video to Nina, and she is highly impressed. As usual, Frank is horrified, but Nina calls the channel's lawyer to make sure everything is legal. The lawyer explains that they are blurring the lines, but as long as they don't reveal the address and cover the victims' faces, they will be fine. Then, Louis demands $15,000 for the video, and when Nina refuses to give him that amount, he finally snaps. Louis points out that he is the one in control here. And from now on, she must pay whatever amount he asks for. Louis asks the reporters to mention his company name, Video Production News, and introduce him to all her colleagues so he can start building relationships. Nina, filled with fear, has no choice but to agree. When it's time to air the video, Louis stays behind, satisfied to watch the reporters introduce his company while showing the footage. The reporters must also describe the crime scene, and Nina keeps offering suggestions to make everything more dramatic, scary, and exaggerated. When they cut to an advertisement, Nina's boss calls to congratulate her and asks to meet Louis. The next morning, Daron Frontieri and her partner arrive at Louis' apartment to ask some questions. Louis spins a story, saying that he heard gunshots and entered the house with the intention of helping. But it was too late, so he started filming instead. He remembers seeing a van leave but couldn't clearly see the faces of the criminals. The detectives didn't trust Louis, but couldn't do anything more, so they left. Afterward, Louis searches the van's license plate online and finds the address of one of the criminals. He goes with Rick to the address, and they wait outside the house for the criminal to come out. When Rick notices the van, he begins to wonder why Louis isn't calling the police right now. Louis explains that he wants the criminals to go somewhere more interesting, hoping they will resist arrest, creating a better story. Rick, terrified, says things are getting too dangerous, so he asks for a raise. Louis tells Rick to come up with a figure, and Rick asks for $75 per night, which Louis immediately agrees to. Louis's reaction makes Rick realize he could have asked for more, but when he tries to ask for a higher salary, Louis says it's too late. Finally, when the criminal leaves the house, they follow him and see him pick up his accomplice. They continue to follow them until the criminals stop at a fast food restaurant. Finally, Louis calls the police, providing a detailed description and claiming that the criminals are armed. He even asserts that these are the wanted criminals from a famous case and takes credit for discovering them. After Louis hangs up, Rick realizes he can ask for a reward from the police for capturing them and demands that Louis share half of the reward with him. Louis gets angry, but, since he really needs a second camera to film from different angles, he agrees to pay Rick. Rick stands aside at the fast food restaurant and shortly after, the police arrive. As they approach the criminals open fire, leading to a shootout that kills several people. Louis and Rick film everything, as one of the criminals is shot dead, while the other is injured but manages to run into his van to flee. The police immediately pursue, and Louis picks up Rick before continuing the chase. As Louis drives recklessly, he constantly yells at Rick to not stop filming. The car chase becomes so wild that a civilian vehicle crashes into a police car, taking the police car out of the chase. The remaining police car continues to chase the criminal, who begins ramming the van into the police car until a crash occurs, resulting in both the criminal and the officer colliding. Louis immediately rushes in to film all the bodies, dramatically announcing that the criminal is dead. He tells Rick to get closer to learn how to capture even more brutal footage. However, as Rick approaches, the criminal suddenly comes back to life and shoots Rick. Louis doesn't show surprise and continues filming as the criminal steps out of the car. He heard the police and tried to shoot at them, but the police immediately shoot the criminal down. Louis checks on Rick and films his wound, making Rick realize that Louis had known the criminal was still alive and had used him to get a better story. Louis feels no remorse, and as Rick dies, Louis takes his camera. Later, Louis brings all the footage to Nina, who is very pleased with the gruesome images. As they prepare to air the footage live, Frank informs Nina that a reliable source has revealed to him that the incident at the house wasn't a random violent robbery. That family is actually part of the mafia and they are hiding drugs. However, Nina refused to include this detail in the story, saying that the tragedy of ordinary people would sell better. Frank said it sounded like Louis, but Nina took it as a compliment, saying Louis had inspired them to aim higher. Then, Detective Frontieri came to the station and asked to see the video as it was evidence. However, Nina refused to hand over the tape without a search warrant. Immediately, Frontieri took Louis to the police station for questioning, but Louis stayed calm and stuck to his story. Frontieri became increasingly angry and criticized his crazy and unethical work. However, she had to release him because there was no evidence. A few nights later, Louis showed up with 2 vans bearing the news production logo, hiring 3 new interns that he wouldn't pay. However, Louis promised that he wouldn't make them do anything he himself wouldn't do. The team quickly set off to find the next story. We have just finished the summary of the movie Nightcrawler. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss exciting videos like this. Thank you for watching.